I've delayed this one far too long. Hello YouTubers, this is the noobifier. I had mentioned in the past that there would be some system build ideas coming along soon. That never really happened because I was waiting to pair that subject with a collaboration, but today we're going to finally build a pair of two very different PCs in the studio. I hope that this is interesting and helpful if you plan to build soon, or if you just want to see what's been going on behind the scenes. The TLDR is I deployed for 6 months, I wanted to continue making content, and for that I needed a mobile workstation. They're expensive, so I sold off my two PCs to fund it. That plan worked out perfectly, as some of you might not have even noticed a significant drop in content. We've all worked too hard for too long to simply stop for 6 months. Now we're fully caught up to date with the backstory, so let's begin. In this video, I'm going to discuss building computers from start to operation, including installing the operating system and making sure that the effing BIOS is up to date. So with that, I'm going to mention Keys, who I use to keep the build costs down. They've offered a totally appropriate code, NOOB, through that collaboration that I mentioned at the beginning. That code gets us 20% discount on checkout on top of their already low prices. I'm always building PCs for friends and myself, and when I say always, I mean it. I looked back and there were 22 PCs that I built since 2018. You can imagine that these savings will add up over each, and I've literally saved a couple $1,000s just in the operating system over those years. Those savings will often allow the owner to spend a little bit more on a larger hard drive, more or faster memory, a better CPU, or even the next graphics card up from the one that they were going to buy. I will be talking in greater detail a little bit later about how easy it is to install Windows from a USB stick and how to be ready for Windows 11, which is coming out in October. We will first start with the main rig and then cover the VR sim rig. The main render rig is my strongest system that allows me to drive games to the highest quality and resolutions, providing liquid smooth game footage for B-roll, tours, and walkthroughs. This is also where I render videos for YouTube. I recently invested by upgrading to a Canon R5 with all new glass. I can now shoot 8K RAW, and hopefully some of you have noticed in recent videos that the photographs are also full frame 45 megapixel. I've also added a DJI drone to the toolbox. 8K RAW produces files that are 20 gigabytes per minute. Drone footage can be up to 30 minutes long. Drive space and data management have become a lot more important. These types of footages are either highly compressed or very, very large. Trying to post-process them on anything other than a supercomputer doesn't work very well. I add animated overlays, I display videos nested inside others with text, arrows, timers, and I want all of that to render fairly quickly to improve my workflow. For the processing core, there was actually only one option. The AMD 5950X is 16-core 32 threads. It can boost as high as 4.9 stock. This one I have overclocked to 4.8 all-core with the slightest undervolt to kind of control the heat a little bit. If I was only building this system to game on, it would be a 5900X instead, or if I was on a budget, the completely underrated 5600X. This build's motherboard was a little bit on the expensive side, but for good reason. The B550 Master is a true 16-phase power delivery, which was important to feed the 5950X and support overclocking with stability. Memory is 64 gigs at 3600 MHz, and when picking your parts, 3600 and above is the sweet spot for AMD processors. Remember to activate XMP in the BIOS, or whatever they call it in AMD. Those instructions will be linked in the doc in the description. My video card, based on availability at the time, could have been anything between a 3080 to a 3090. The case and power supply were chosen to support the needs of a 3090. It turned out that I was actually able to find a 3080 Ti at MSRP, and as I said, because I didn't really know about the graphics card and I thought it might be a 3090, I went with a 1000 watt Corsair 80 Platinum. The storage on this PC is quite unique based on all of everything I mentioned at the beginning. System C is a 1TB 980 Pro. Fast Scratch D is a 2TB 980 Pro, and that's for B-roll. And then Scratch E is a third drive, simply called Scratch. It's a 2TB Intel 660p, just for dumping drives and cards to sort out files that are moved over to the NAS. It made no sense to put a bunch of effort into building a quiet room just to plop a loud hotbox in there. The shortest possible run between the monitors and the computer is achieved with a custom monitor mount from Monster Tech, and the computer is mounted on the opposite side of the back wall. If you can achieve a remote configuration in your own house, you'll be able to let the fan spin up a little bit more aggressively without having to directly worry about all the extra noise. I love wall-mounted PCs. The Thermaltake P8 that this system is now based on is much larger than the previous P3, and it also had a different center of gravity. I needed to adjust the mounting location, so I removed parts of the drywall to properly reinforce the mounting location for the weight, The drywall was patched and painted like nothing ever happened. The case is extremely modular and one of the few who are intended directly to be placed on a wall. I've had great success building thermally sound systems in open chassis, and I think they're actually pretty. Everyone always asks about dust. The floor is tile and there's a Roomba that's programmed to clean up nightly at 2 a.m. when we're asleep, so dust isn't actually a consideration and everything here is on a very beefy UPS. CPU, SSDs, and memory were installed onto the motherboard with the stock AMD bracket pre-positioned for the all-in-one cooler. The 3 SSDs are covered with metal heat spreaders that came with the B550 board. I noticed that the included thermal pads didn't actually touch the SSDs, which was really weird. That would actually make it operate hotter, so I doubled up on the thermal pads by placing a second aftermarket pad that I just had lying around. You can buy them on Amazon. Now, unlike before, that metal heat spreader actually gets hot when it's driving, which is a great thing. If you think about it, if a metal thing in a computer is hot to the touch, that means that the part is thermally connected and should help to operate things cooler. The motherboard was attached to the case base. I used only a single set of pull fans this time. I used to use push-pull configurations on my radiators in the past. Push-pull offers an advantage only on specific applications, like a very thick or very dense radiator. I decided to mount the graphics card vertically this time so that the card would exhaust mostly up towards the top fans. The backplate of this card, even under light load, got stupidly hot, which does mean that it's doing its job. But to help it out, I decided to also add a pair of 60mm fans on a custom bracket. The power supply was positioned, all the wiring was routed and velcroed into place, fan controllers and pump were connected, the case was buttoned up because I am an optimist. Now it was time to install the operating system, but because Windows 11 is launching in October and it will be offered as a free upgrade option, I needed to ensure that I had a genuine copy of Windows 10. Microsoft has only confirmed that a genuine version of Windows 10 is eligible, and we don't yet know what the status of 7 and 8 are. So if you're currently operating on an unregistered version of 10, you could simply enter a code to activate it and then perform the upgrade. Buying Windows directly from Microsoft is about $250. As I said, I've saved thousands. No box, no DVD, and no shipping means less expensive. They buy in bulk and deliver a genuine lifetime code through an email. The operating system itself gets downloaded directly from Microsoft using their Install USB Creator. You first boot the system with the drive installed. It installs in about a minute or two, and then you use your new code. The B550 chipset and BIOS on both of my new motherboards were actually older than the 5950 and the 5600 CPUs. The BIOS on both builds didn't know what to do with the new CPU and it wouldn't post. If you encounter an issue with your brand new AMD build, you have to flash it first by downloading the BIOS to a USB 2.0 memory stick, power up by pushing the button, and once the lights have stopped flashing, your new system will operate as expected. Hopefully, all of that information saves you hours of frustration. So, once the BIOS and operating system install are done, you can perform Windows Update, verify that the OS is genuine, and you can also verify the longevity of your new activation as being lifetime. Install your graphics drivers, and in particular on AMD, you really should install chipset, land, and storage drivers directly from the manufacturer. You're now free to install Steam, Origin, StarCitizen, Office, Adobe, whatever else you need. I have all of those pre-positioned plus Office. I use Google Docs for YouTube stuff, but corporate world and my work still work on Word and PowerPoint. It was time to move this new computer to its new home on the wall. This system is a pure beast as expected, but I was very surprised to see that the memory load would regularly cross over 32 gigs when playing Star Citizen, thus proving what we've known for quite some time, that 16 is simply not enough. And it's simple to understand that with that specific CPU and graphics card combination, productivity workloads such as rendering videos are dealt with seamlessly and swiftly. Now I feel confident to test publishing some content in 8K despite the huge render task load, which is actually great for the channel and great for you, the viewer. I will now break down the build for the second PC in the studio, which is for VR, VR Sim, DCS, and testing performance. In the interest of being more economical, it's scaled way back from my main system, but it's still super capable. It actually offers me a lot of insight on how game performance might scale based on different hardware. This PC also sits on the wall like the other, but in a smaller P3 case from Thermaltake. For some reason, I just really like the look of these wall-mounted PCs, and the thermals never disappoint. The computer specs are as follows: an AMD 5600X, 6-core 12 threads that boosts to 4.6. I gotta tell you, this is a surprisingly great CPU for any gaming and very basic productivity. You should totally consider it when building your new PC. Graphics are still very important as the computer's running VR, so I was able to get a RTX 3070 Founders Edition from Main Gear. I actually really love the aesthetics of the Founders Edition cards when I saw them. I don't know what more to say, I'm just a sucker for pretty. The right card was available for the right price from Main Gear, and I'm super pleased with its ability to run cool and perform seamlessly in games. Just for reference, I found that the 3070 performs similarly to 2080 Ti. This PC has 16 gigs at 3600, which identified that performance hit that I talked about earlier in Star Citizen. I found a super fun custom 90-degree radiator bracket that was on eBay, which I'm using to hold 3 additional fans on the right side. This is a great little trick to keep airflow flowing over VRMs, SSDs, and other components. These fans operate around 600 RPM, rarely ramping up, and they don't really add to the sound floor of the entire system. The 3070 was positioned horizontally this time, as once again I wanted the exhaust to blow upwards. And then like before, it was time to install the operating system using a USB drive and a genuine license ready for Windows 11 in October. Install the drivers, install Steam, Origin, DCS, Star Citizen, and then run some benchmarks. And I know that there will be some future testing for Star Citizen when I do a review for the MonsterTech MTX and MTS sim rigs. I know that I'm going to get a similar completely immersive VR experience testing DCS, either fixed wing or rotor. You may have seen this PC in operation during the review for Virpil and MonsterTech. In closing, if you have any questions about any of the builds or you'd like to share yours, please post them in the description or feel free to join the Discord. Links to everything, as I said, are in the description. And remember the code NOOB. Thank you very much for spending your time with me. Fly safe, and I'll see you in the verse.